Hello, I'm Sarah Lister from Sheffield Digital, and today I'm talking to Harvey Morton, who is a freelance digital marketer and host of the Social Sanctuary podcast. Harvey, why did you decide to start your own company while you were at school?
Thanks, Sarah. So I started my own business at school through a regional enterprise competition called the Big Challenge. I started my current business in 2013, but before that, I entered the competition with a friend. So that was in 2011. So we got £25 startup loan from our school to start up the business and then see who was most successful over 2 school terms. And that led to an awards event at the end where teams were awarded various prizes based on a number of categories. And yeah, after winning various prizes in that competition, I decided to keep the business going through my GCSEs, A-levels and university. And that's kind of evolved to where I am today. So the original reason for starting it was just because we were at school and the thought of making any money excited us. I certainly never planned to keep it going until now, but it's just happened that way because I found that I got the business bug and I really enjoyed it. So it was nice to find something that I felt like I was good at, because I struggled a lot at school with bullying and things like that.
So did you say it was only £25 that you received as your startup?
Yeah, so it was it was £25. So when I entered with my current business, I was doing IT support to start with. So I'd go out to businesses and individuals and set up things like computers and iPads for them. And I think that the £25 wasn't really enough to even get me a website or any business cards or anything. So I ended up investing, I think it was £100 in total, some of my own money as well. And that got me my website. I remember being excited to buy a t-shirt with my logo on that I'd wear when I went out on jobs, and then business cards, and I think that's what I used to get started. But the website was my most important selling tool, really.
And what was the first project that you ever worked on, or the first client that you ever worked with?
So I can remember thinking that when I put my website up there, within days of that I'd start getting inquiries and customers coming in, and that it'd all be really exciting, but it didn't happen like that at all. I think it actually, at first it was mainly family and friends that I went out and supported them with their IT issues. And then I think it was probably 2 months later that I got my first outside customer, and I went to set up like a new Windows laptop for them. And then they got me back to set up a few other devices. And from there, it kind of got going where I was getting more outside inquiries. But so it was very slow setting up and doing the IT support to start with, and then that then evolved into web design, and then eventually into digital marketing, which is what I'm doing now.
And how did you fit in your work around your studying?
So it was certainly really difficult, especially at sixth form and at university. I mean, I did a business degree at Hallam. I did business and enterprise management. And from starting the business at school, I always knew that I wanted to go to Hallam, because of their reputation for the business school, and I had friends who I'd met in the big challenge competition doing business courses at Hallam that were older than me. So yeah, that's what made me realise I really wanted to take studying business forward. But yeah, I had at school, I had lots of teachers that told me that I should focus on the studying because running my business was going to be a distraction, and that it would just mean that I didn't get as good grades as my peers did. But actually running the business from a young age helped me to decide what I wanted to do at university before most other people knew what they wanted to do. And it helped me to gain so much experience of working at a young age as well. So it's always funny when I go back to the school now, and I know the teachers that didn't support me at the time, but they always make a big fuss now. I did have a lot of support from my school as well. Thankfully, it was only a select few that didn't. But yeah, it was really tough because often I'd be missing out on things with friends, or I'd be working quite late. So I'd have the day at school or college, and then I'd be working into the evening, which I don't know how I did it, to be honest, but I think it's because I enjoyed running the business that it didn't seem like so much of a chore for me.
And do you have a better balance now that you're not studying at the same time?
Yeah, it's definitely, well, saying that actually, I was going to say it's definitely better, but I can remember finishing at university and thinking, oh, this is great, I've got so much more time, but then I filled that time with taking on more work, so it didn't, for a while there was still no work-life balance, but now I'm quite strict with it, so I try to stick to the times that I advertise that I work, and as much as it frustrates me seeing emails coming in over the weekend, I do try my best not to reply, because I've learned that if you make yourself available around the clock, then people will just expect that all the time and you'll never really get to switch off. So I try at the weekends to have at least one day where I don't go on my laptop at all, because working in digital marketing, I'm just at a screen all the time. So I definitely need that rest when the weekend comes around.
And what support was available to you while creating and developing your business?
I never accessed any funding as such, certainly not in the early stages, but being part of the big challenge competition meant that I got access to a mentor and different support from the universities and business professionals that supported the challenge. So I've always had a mentor right from day one of starting my business, because I learned that I needed someone to bounce ideas off and just talk to. So I've never gone without a mentor since. And I think that was the most valuable support that I had when building the business, especially at school level. And because I was so young, a lot of people looked at me when I'd turn up at their houses or businesses to help them out with their IT problems, and that I could just tell that, well, many people questioned my age, but people just looked at me and thought, you're so young, like, how can you be doing this? But then, so I had that to battle with. So it was nice to have professionals around me that saw my experience and showed me really how to move forward and how things were done. But then more recently, I've relied on entering awards and competitions to access that prize money and at university, I was lucky enough to access a few bursaries to support growing my business, so that was great. But yeah, I'd say the most powerful support tool for me was just from networking and letting people know what I did, and not being afraid to ask for support as well, because most people naturally wanted to help me move forward with whatever I was working on.
So how did you find those mentors to work with? What was your approach? Did you go and find them, or did you see opportunities?
Yeah, so yeah, when I started, I was lucky enough to just be allocated a mentor through the competition, but then I found it quite tough when I moved on um, from school and from college, because that's when I had a gap where I didn't have a mentor to look to. And I think unless you're part of a school or a university, then finding that person can be difficult. Now I've left education, I work with a business coach that was recommended to me. I'm part of a Freelancers Facebook group, and I met my current mentor in there. So that was really useful. But yeah, always trying to look for who's out there for support. But I used to go to lots of networking events in the early stages, and I still do. And I met people there who weren't coaches or weren't mentors, but we built a relationship, and then I saw them as a mentor type figure. And then I also kept in touch with lecturers and teachers from school who I've seen as mentors along the way. So I've had lots of different people that have supported me in different ways. But it is hard to find that person, because I've had my fair share of mentors and people that have tried to offer me guidance that I've not clicked with and haven't been a good fit for me. So it is tough to find that right person.
And were there any particular figures or leaders that inspired you, perhaps in addition to the mentors that you've worked with?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say so. I often quote Steve Jobs in some of my presentations when I go out to schools and colleges and other venues to do talks. But other than that, I ultimately was inspired by the support network that I had around me. So enterprise advisors, teachers, lecturers. I've never really looked at any public figures for inspiration. I was more inspired by those who were supporting me and looking at what they had achieved in their careers. I think probably because I'd started to build relationships with people through networking, and that inspired me to want to follow in their footsteps. So yeah, I wouldn't say anyone in the public eye, just mainly people I'd met along the way.
Yeah, I've seen that enterprise continue the support after graduation as well for is it up to 5 years?
It is, yeah, it's up to 5 years, which yeah, I've not really got that many years of support left now, but yeah, that I keep in touch with the university all the time and go back and do workshops for them, and it's always lovely to keep that relationship going, because it was at university with the support of the enterprise team that I was really able to grow my business, and without them I wouldn't be where I am, because they put so much time and effort into making sure I got to where I wanted to be.
And what was the main reason that you decided to relaunch your company with a new name and brand?
Yeah, so in 2018, I rebranded from Harvey Morton IT to Harvey Morton Digital, and that was because I'd started out doing IT support, and then moved more into web design, and then through a series of work placements in between sixth form and university, realised that I love social media management and marketing. I was offering so many different services, and I'd always been advised to position myself as a corporate business rather than an individual freelancer. And while I was at university, I just started to resent the brand and my website. I looked at it and I just thought, this just doesn't feel like me. It's all corporate, it's black and white, and I'm offering so many different services, some that I don't even enjoy doing anymore. So I thought I need something that's bright and has some personality to it. Because I wanted the business to feel like a reflection of me, because I started to realise that the advice that I'd been driven to position myself as a corporate business was wrong. I went through a period where I wasn't getting as much work in, and I thought, well, people come to me because they enjoy the personal relationship that we have when we work together. So I needed to change that. So I was lucky enough to win the National Young Freelancer of the Year prize in 2018. That was awarded by IPSI, and they're great for freelance support. And I got some prize money from that competition, and I thought I'll use this to help me rebrand. So I got all the website redone, and I got an external copywriter and graphic designer in to help me. And I'd never been able to afford to do anything like that before. And repositioning myself as a freelancer was the best thing I've ever done, because I think a few years ago, maybe people didn't understand what freelancing was, but now there's been a real shift, and it's less about being a company and more important to people to work with an individual. So yeah, it was great, and I really enjoyed the process actually of building the brand from scratch again, because yeah, doing it from school, it was just something I'd added to more and more, and it was just a mess, really.
So what process did you go through to sort of bring it to life and make it more you and your personality?
Yeah, so I spoke to various other freelancers, copywriters, graphic designers, and even other web designers, just to get an idea of their process and what they needed to know to get started. And working with other freelancers inspired me to know how to rebrand and reposition. So first of all, I always used quite corporate imagery before, but I got some headshots done that were just really casual and in colourful places around Sheffield. And that was the first thing I had done before anything else. And when I saw how colourful the pictures were, I thought, this is what I need to use to form the basis of the rebrand. I knew I wanted to keep my name in the business, but I wanted it to be just laid back and chatty and fun, because looking at other websites, I did loads of research on competitors, and it all felt quite just bland, and there wasn't really a person behind any of these other agencies. So I thought, well, what would I like if I went on and I was looking for digital marketing? And I sort of made everything informal and made it accessible, and it injected some quotes into the website as well that were quite fun and inspiring, because I wanted to make people feel welcome when they came onto my website. So it was a really enjoyable process. It took far longer than what I imagined, but that's because as you try things, you then change your mind, and I got lots of feedback at every step of the way. And in fact, that's always something that I have done when I've been working on a website or the business or any changes related to the processes. I always ask my networks for feedback and put things on social media, because I think that if you don't take on board other feedback, then it might mean that you're going in the wrong direction. Doesn't mean that you have to take on everything that everyone says, but I always find that I feel more comfortable if I've had plenty of other opinions.
And how do you think it's actually made a difference then in terms of how many people are approaching you for work?
I think it's made a huge difference. I immediately saw a change in the amount of inquiries that I was getting, and people were always commenting on the website and the photos and the branding. So I knew I'd made the right decision, and making that change allowed me to reposition myself and think about what I really wanted as well, because I just looked at everything I was doing and looked at what I didn't enjoy or what I was putting off doing, and I decided to focus on 4 key areas: so social media management, web design, influencer marketing, and then SEO as well. So I decided to focus on those areas, because that's where I'd built the most experience. So yeah, I'd say as if you're thinking about freelancing as you go along, look at where your most popular services are and then specialize in those, because by doing too much it can almost turn people away and put them off from contacting you if you've got no clear direction.
How do you stay on top of things like social media and SEO, because obviously they're constantly changing in their approach and the tools they have? So is there any way that you do your best to sort of stay in touch with what's happening with the changes?
Yeah, so with social media, I'd say it's best to try and post at least 3 times a week, every day if you can, and you don't have to post more than once a day or at weekends if it doesn't fit with the brand. But always try to be proactive and put yourself out there, even if you don't feel like you've got much to say. You can always recycle older content. But I've realized that through building up my social media pages and just staying active on there, then the more people see your content, the more that they remember you, and then they might come to you further down the line when they need help with the services you offer. So yeah, it's important not to put too much pressure on yourself for things like social media and SEO, because sometimes it moves at a much faster pace than we can all keep up with, and you might spend ages working on something for it to completely change a week later. But both SEO and social media are equally important, so it's worth spending some time getting to know how to do both. But know your target market and make sure you're engaging with people who are visiting the website and visiting and interacting with your social media posts as well. It's important to be consistent. If you look at major brands on social media, they always run campaigns and content based on themes. So if people know what to expect from you from your social media pages, then they're more likely to get involved. And make sure that you're not just trying to sell services all the time. Share content that's good quality and of value to people as well. If you offer free advice and resource in a limited way, then it shows your expertise and also gives people a tool that they might use and then come back to you for paid work at a later date. I'd say SEO is more difficult to keep up with at the moment because that's always changing more so than what social media is. But it's important just to maybe once a week look at the search results, look at where you rank on the search engines, and look at how other companies have positioned themselves as well, because you might be targeting keywords and searches that are actually not relevant for your audience. So yeah, it's always just good to keep an eye on what's going on around you.
Absolutely. And what do you think has been the most successful way for you to attract the clients that you work with?
I think at first it was through networking. So because I was a new business, I certainly wasn't getting lots of web traffic or work from what I was doing online and on social media. So I relied on networking events to introduce myself to people in Sheffield, and I think when people met me and spoke to me about what I could help them with, it gave them the reassurance they needed, as more so than what they would have got from just looking at my website, especially with my age when I started. So networking was really important, and it still is really important for me. But I think as I've grown, I've really focused on where I can offer expertise, and SEO has been really important for me. So looking at trends are really important. Look at what people are searching for, look at what there is demand for, and then target those areas. And yeah, more recently, I mean, I'd say for the last couple of years, most of the work I get through now is just from referral or word of mouth, which is really good. But that's come from me trying to get as many reviews as possible and establish a reputation. But that's really important, actually, if you're working with a customer. Even if they're really new and you've only been working together for a few weeks, make sure you get those reviews on a platform like Google, because that can really help to boost your reputation, especially in the local area. And with SEO as well, don't go targeting national locations straight away. Focus on where you are or the cities you want to target, and then move forward from there. And then yeah, recently I've been just trying to raise my profile through PR as well, because that's been really powerful for me, getting new work in the last year or so. So it's I think just being proactive on social media and online does really make a difference, but it's certainly for long-term results rather than like overnight success.
Have you reached a point in your career so far where you've had to start turning away clients, or saying that they might have to wait for a month or so until you have more time?
Yeah, I'd say lockdown last year, I lost a lot of work overnight when lockdown was announced, but then I had an influx of requests for websites from businesses who had no online presence, and they were wanting social media pages, they were wanting websites put up, and it got to a point where I was just trying to help as many people as I could, and I just had no time. So rather than turning people away straight up, I decided to set up a form on my website that was a waiting list that people could join. And some people that couldn't afford to wait, so they went elsewhere, but I built up that list, and then I was able to get in touch with them when I was ready. And it was really important for me to control that workload as well, because it would have been easy to just keep saying yes to things, and I'm really rubbish at saying no, but I've learned over the years that if I do take on too much, then I just become overwhelmed, and I like to give each project lots of attention to detail as well. And yeah, it's frustrating having to turn work away, especially recently, because I'd love to do it all. And some people get frustrated when you do turn them away, especially if you've worked together previously. But I think being a freelancer, it's hard because people assume that you've got a team around you, and it's not, it's just one person, and there's only so much I can do. I have collaborated with other freelancers on projects, which really helps. So I've tried to build up a team of other freelancers that I can go to when I'm really busy, or even when I'm going on holiday and I can't keep up with certain tasks while I'm away. It's I'd say when you get to a point where you're growing, look at who you've met along the way and who's around you who can support you with, even if you just give them like an hour's work. It's good to know that you've got people there for when things get too much.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. How do you decide how much to charge for different projects and clients?
So I've never been very good at this, to be honest. I think when I started, especially moving into web design, I actually did lots of free work, which I wouldn't recommend. But I think with web design in particular, I needed to build up a portfolio. So I was just offering to do people websites for free. But then while it did get me to where I wanted to be, I then had clients who I'd done free work for who were struggled with the idea of paying again because I'd done so much work for them for free. So definitely avoid that if you can. But yeah, with pricing, people have always told me that I've undercharged. So I've tried to get much better at that over the last year. And it's hard as a freelancer because you can't charge what a big agency's charging or a big company, because you know that they've got lots of overheads and a team of people working on one project, and they can get things done maybe quicker than an individual freelancer can. So the good thing about working for yourself is you can maybe charge less because you've not got as much overheads and upkeep, but don't undersell yourself as well. I think as you build a portfolio, have a review every few months and look at the prices. I've got to a stage now where I've priced my services quite high, to a point where it makes me a bit uncomfortable. And I do get people that say that's too much for me now, and I'm tempted to discount the rate so that I can work with them again. But then I think when you offer discounts, it sort of defeats the object of pricing yourself based on your experience. So if people are saying that your rates are too high, you'll always get people that do see the value and do pay the prices that you set. But if it's not working altogether, then maybe look at why people aren't going ahead with the quotes that you provide them with, because there'll always be a reason. And take customer feedback on board as well. I know when people have told me that things have been too cheap, I've thought, well, that, you know, I respect their opinion. They must be right. But I think the worst thing that I did when I started was I never used to ask what people's budgets were because I felt uncomfortable about it. And then I'd do a project for someone and they'd say, oh, you were so much cheaper than all the other quotes we got. Our budget was actually this. And then I'd be thinking, you know, I've missed out there. So yeah, try to feel comfortable with asking people what they've got to spend, because not everyone will answer that, but usually if you know what the budget is, then you can price based on that, especially with bigger organizations as well. If they've got a budget to spend, usually they'll want to spend all of that, so there's no point quoting until you know more about the project you're working on.
And do you have like a variety of choices for people between like hourly rates and half day and full day rates for different things that you do?
Yeah, so with my main services, so social media and website design, I have 3 different packages for each service. So an entry level, and then like a mid-sized package, and then a premium one for people that have got more to spend. But then I also, depending on the project, if it doesn't fit with one of those packages I offer, then I quote either by the hour or I ask what the budget is and quote around that. I've never really charged day rates because the services I offer don't always complement that. Because sometimes I went through a stage of trying to charge day rates, but then if something took me much longer than what I imagined, then it got complicated. So I tend to stick to the different packages I offer, and then if it's something more bespoke, then I quote by the hour. And I never tell people, I'll give people an estimate of how long it'll take, but if the project gets to a point where it's either shorter or longer than what I've said, then at least the client knows what the hourly rate is and they can budget for that.
What's your experience been like so far as a podcast host?
I've always had a fascination really with music and radio. So when I was tiny, I used to pretend to be a DJ in my bedroom, so commentating between songs, and I always wanted to be on the radio. So while I was at school, I went through a stage of making YouTube videos and reviewing films and records, but when I went through a lot of bullying, I lost my confidence with that really. And I think setting up my business and getting it to the stage it's at now has helped me to regain that confidence. So yeah, I guess my passion for radio and media has never really disappeared. And what the great thing is that through doing this, through running my business, it's kind of brought me back to that original career path that I wanted to be on. So with the podcast, I always wanted to set one up, but then had no idea how to do it. But I was lucky enough to meet a few people that could help me with that. And I was so nervous to do my first episode with a guest. I did practices on my own, but it's not the same when you've got no one to talk to. So yeah, I was really nervous at first, but then I found that I got into the flow of it quite quickly. And I really enjoyed talking to different business owners about what they do and their relationships with social media. So I love it now, and it's a great hobby really, alongside running the business. But I've made sure to link it in with what I do, so it's just an extra avenue really to what I offer. But I've had some great feedback on it, which has been a real big confidence boost with that. But it's certainly been more complicated than I first thought it would be and more time consuming, but I love it and I find it really rewarding, especially if someone's listened to an episode that, you know, I've never met before and they send me a message to say it helped them. That's the best thing about it.
And do you think it's actually led to more work for you?
Yeah, I think at first it didn't. It was certainly just something that I was doing for fun in the background, but then it has led to work more recently. People have heard my expertise and conversations on those episodes, particularly for social media services, and then they've got in touch to say that they want to work with me based on that, which is great because often they've already decided they want to go with me before going to anyone else. So it's been really valuable. And I never started it with the intention of bringing in any more business. It was just something that I wanted to do to fill that gap of always wanting to be sort of in broadcasting. So yeah, it's an added bonus, but it's really nice when people come to me as a result of what they've heard on there.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that you find challenging as a freelancer?
I think the biggest challenge that I have as a freelancer really is just maintaining a work-life balance, managing workload as well when you are just one person. But also a big challenge, not so much now, but I've had it a lot over the years, is late payments. I think when it's a company and you've got a team of staff, then you have other people to help you manage and chase that. But I think sometimes, and it's only a very small minority of people, but when you are a freelancer, people think it's okay to pay late and it's okay to ignore you. So that has been a big challenge, and there are things you can do to make that easier, but it does take up a lot of time when you're chasing late payments. And I'd say if you are thinking about freelancing, then make a note of who the late payers are and look at who does it continuously, and then maybe try and get rid of them if you can.
Yeah.
Because it's important that the client shows you an equal amount of respect that you show them. So that's what I've tried to do, and I've not had any late payment issues now for a while, thankfully. But that's because the clients that I work with, we've been working together for a long time, and I think if you getting a new client, then set those expectations. And one of the biggest mistakes I made when I started was that I never used contracts to like seal the deal, really. So there's loads of free websites and tools you can use to get templates for contracts. But it's worth investing some money in getting a good template, because if you've got a signature and got all the payment terms in writing, then it gives you a lot more backup than chasing a payment when you've not got anything to show that they've agreed to the work.
Do you think it's worthwhile to have the conversation about the payment sort of deadline with the client before you get started on the project?
Yeah, definitely. I have quite strict payment terms in the contracts now, and I outline those in the emails as well when I'm sending all the paperwork over, just to make sure that everyone's aware and no one can say that they're not. And I use an accounting system. There's loads of good ones like QuickBooks, and and Zero and Free Agent, and they can actually send automatic reminders for you as well. It's worth just looking at guidance on invoicing as well, because there's certain lines that you can put on invoices about late payment that always get people to pay on time. But I have a rule where if they've not paid after a week, then I just stop the service, and that always works to get payment. So just be, as it can feel really uncomfortable, but just be firm, because when you're not, that's when people take advantage of you.
You've already given loads of really great advice, but can you please share any other guidance that might help people who are thinking about freelance work in digital marketing?
I'd say you've got to be ambitious and just go for it, because at least then if it doesn't work out, you can say that you've given freelancing a go. But it's not as scary as everyone makes out, especially on social media. I think as long as you're prepared and you're organised and you keep on top of your workload, then freelancing can be really enjoyable, because you are your own boss at the end of the day. But yeah, make sure that whatever you're offering, that you're passionate about it, because without that, it'll not be a success. I mean, you in the early stages, you often have to work really hard, and it might involve missing out on things to get things off the ground. So just make sure that you see it as a hobby and not a chore, and I think you'll be off to a great start.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for a great interview.
Thanks, Sarah.